Last episode, we blew up the spark plug at Glen Helen. We got a new motor from Robert Moruzzi. We sent it off to Blake's house to put in the new motor. We got it fired up at like 2 days ago. It's working all good. We're at Dyno's shop here to do a dyno day, see how much we can get with this motor.
We'll probably do some more heat cycles.
Okay.
Usually we'll do that at light load, just to help the ring seal nice, and then let it cool off, check it. I'm sure you guys already did some heat cycles at Blake's.
3 so far.
Do some more adjustments, and hopefully we're soon. Fuel table changes today. We know the spark table's good. Everything else should work.
Good.
Hopefully quickly.
Nice.
Hi, my name is Lance. This is my shop. I do dyno calibration services here, R&D. We have this truck in, again, came in, had an older motor in it, dropped a valve. Now we have a freshie in there, so we're just trimming everything.
All right, so the reason we're here today is we had the original Robert Moruzzi. Well, he rebuilt it, just a quick rebuild a couple years ago. That motor is a 418 stroker LS3 that's been in this truck for numerous years, I think 4 or 5 years. So it was tired. It dropped a valve and lost number 1 cylinder. So we had to pull the motor out, and we were going to rebuild it, but we thought, you know, the best bet is to put a different engine in it, new, fresh, and then rebuild the old engine, so we had a backup engine. So this engine is a 525 horsepower stock LS3 that Robert took and put aftermarket heads on it and big cam, valve springs, all that, and it should be similar number, but it is not a stroker. It's probably a 475 cubic inch engine versus a 418, so it might have a little less torque, but maybe similar power numbers. We'll see. Hopefully the numbers will be as good as the old motor, because the old motor was tired and could be. So we're just gonna hope for the best, cross our fingers, and but it'll be brand new engine, hopefully more reliable, and get them through some seasons, at least 3 or 4 years without problems.
So you just you turn on this a little bit?
Yeah, I adjusted this
screw. Okay.
I made it a little bit more long.
Yeah. And it looks like the set screw's there, so you can just put it back to the original position.
Yeah, you can see where it was at the set screw. Checked all the plugs and everything at Kevin's, Blake's.
We have vents on the back of the valve covers, right? You have a clean air filter?
I don't think we've been to the dirt yet since the last time. Power curve number you get on the dyno, or that arc that you do, how come that makes such a big difference in the way you feel on the truck more than anything? Because you're getting ultimate or a good curve? How does that affect you as you feel in driving?
So all of it has to match. You have to have the gear that matches, the torque converter, and your cam. Once they're all good, it's good. In these, we really like to see a big torque number with the converter with a lower stall that's more efficient. It doesn't put as much heat in the drive line. You don't have to turn the motor as much,
right,
and the truck goes pretty much just as fast. Now, what a lot of these guys do is they'll run a big cam, the high stall converter. Yeah, it gets right up to there real fast and moves, but it does put a lot more heat. So if you have the coolers to support it and all works out, well, yeah, then it's a good combo. A lot of the pre-runner guys do that, and they end up baking transmissions pretty often. So you've probably heard a lot of those guys go through transmissions, especially if they're running in sand. They don't last too long. They don't have the cooler for the trans and the setup. So we like to sell, makes a little more torque in that application. This, for what you're doing with this, that would make more sense too.
Yeah.
Just has to be built for that, and we don't want to nuke transmissions you can't win any races if you don't finish the race.
Right. What about a guy comes in, let's say with similar torque and horsepower numbers, and you dyno it, and it stays the same numbers, but the curve was just terrible, and you fixed the curve to be ultimately throughout the whole curve? How much does he gain from that versus just getting the bigger horsepower number and the? Doesn't that make a huge difference?
So you have an average. If you blow right past your torque peak and go to your horsepower peak, you have something that feels like a go-kart, almost like a side-by-side. The clutch goes right to there, versus if you have a converter that goes up to your torque peak and then carries to your horsepower peak, you have more average power and usable power in that.
In that realm.
Now you get to a certain level when you have enough horsepower that just blows the tires off, so it goes right to the horsepower peak anyway.
Right.
It totally depends. Once these things get over 400 horsepower, they usually blow the tires off pretty good. I personally like seeing stuff with a tighter converter and more torque in the engine, just because you don't have to downshift as much.
Gotcha.
So what you might be doing is you might have it in third gear and you're just going up against a converter that's going to put a ton more heat. Versus you have it tighter, it's in second. It's like having a manual, and it couples better.
Gotcha.
It's more efficient. You're not putting as much heat and slip into it.
everything.
I expected about 50 between the smaller displacement in the heads.
Yeah.
We're close.
Yeah. Okay. What was the torque before? Do you remember?
Let's look. So you can see our air fuels are very similar. You can see the difference in the horsepower, but you can also see what the stall is. So see how this one makes much more torque? So this one stalls, right here. This one coming up to here.
Oh yeah.
So that's just a difference in the two. So you have the same converter.
Yeah.
So the converter made no change, but you can see a difference in torque and horsepower moves that over.
Moves it over more. Yeah.
I mean, our air fuels are pretty much dead nuts.
Okay.
So this one's peaked about here. You can see this one's still climbing.
Yeah.
So it peaks later. The cam is probably pretty similar,
Yeah.
just the motor size.
It's just like.
Yep. So this one comes up, stalls right about here.
Yeah.
4800. This one's still flashing at 53, 54. That's just the difference in engine size. And
Gotcha. What's the torque difference?
probably pretty substantial actually. 332, 398. But that number is also not accurate. So if the converter was tighter, that torque number would probably be higher.
Oh, okay.
So I'm wondering if the other motor also has a little bit more compression too than this one,
Yeah.
seeing as they're probably similar cam.
Yep.
So I would assume this, even though this is an aftermarket crate deal, that port is very similar to a factory port versus what you had before, which was trick flow heads
Yep.
with probably a much bigger port.
It's right around the number of a spec motor, but
It's about
if we get 570, 75, that's a
the
little
spec
more.
motor does a little bit less. So
Yeah, it does a little more like that.
So a spec motor does right at 345. That's 15 more. We expected about 20. So we're within
We're right there.
a percent or two.
Yeah. And that makes sense. 575, the ratio. Yeah. So it makes sense.
Let me play a little bit more. 25 degrees hotter. That's our horsepower difference. Is air temperature. Probably about 105 right here. See if the manifold air temps change, our horsepower number changes.
No, but he's not gonna get a ton more out of where he's at now. He's fine toothed right now. Like, I mean, if he gets 10 more horsepower, I'd be like surprised. That's a ton more power. You got a turbo in there or something?
No, as you can see, air density, that's all that was. So we found what we were missing. Or it was just hot.
The last famous words were, "We're not going to get any more horsepower out of it."
No, but he's not gonna get a ton more out of where he's at now.
I mean, we're still seeing like 90, but
Yeah,
when the truck's actually moving and racing,
It'll be that.
the air is cleaner inside. So we did exactly pretty much what we guessed.
You're gonna be. We're right on the money.
Within 0.1 horsepower.
We're gonna say 370.
Yeah, we say 370. I mean, we could cooler air probably hit 373-ish, but we were definitely hit right exactly where we thought we would be. So these two, the taller one was the old one, of course, to make a little more horsepower. That difference is just air temperature. So we had hot air in the truck, it was 105. So I see that in the manifold air temp. That's why I put a fan in there, got down to 90. That made the more horsepower. That's all that was, is air density. We're already at, I don't know, essentially below sea level, 101 kPa, so we have good air. It's 81 degrees. Ideal would be 70. So
That's why on a cold night, the truck hauls ass.
Night run. Night run.
more often, all the data works. That's a wrap. We didn't have to change a lot of the fuel trim. We already knew what this motor was going to do. We've seen this exact motor in many other trucks. We made right the number we should see for this combination. And that was it. It was a pretty easy day on the treadmill.
Well, how did you feel about your dyno day? How'd it go?
Good. Happy with it. It can go fast still.
Was it close to your old motor's numbers?
No, but it's super light, so it doesn't really matter. Also, I like the sound.
How'd you feel about the dyno day?
Very good. It's going to be reliable, good horsepower, usable, and fun.
We're missing cool race truck stuff.